Hello everyone, I'm David, and I've got a pretty shameful story. You see, I'm a patriot, and once decided to go and pay back my debt to the homeland. Unfortunately, it turned out that the majority of youngsters bound to military service over the past few years have been girls. Don't get me wrong, I never had anything against the army. Actually, I wanted to become a soldier since my childhood. I dreamed about serving in the army, clad in a beautiful uniform and protecting the innocent. You see, my dad served in the army, so I really wished to follow in his footsteps and to become a part of our own military dynasty, so to speak. Unfortunately, the reality turned out to be far from what Dad once told me. Well, let me tell this in order, otherwise my story will turn into a real mess. As I've already mentioned, I've wanted to be like my dad since childhood. I've wanted to be a strong, brave man with square jaw and lots of impressive scars. Dad was my superhero, and no Iron Man or Hulk could stand up to him. I always agreed to clean the house or mow the lawns so that my dad won't get tired and could tell me more of his war stories. Dad often remembered the war. He told me how they dragged their wounded from the battlefield with artillery shells exploding all around and bullets flying over their heads. With his stories and my vivid imagination, I needed neither films nor computer games. I was determined to become a soldier when I grow up, and then, why the hell not? Maybe I can get promoted to the officer rank. So I was gearing myself for this future since the time I was 12. Then I engaged in professional sports. A good soldier is the one that fights well. Can't say it was a total failure, but it certainly wasn't a success. They've praised me and even promised that in some time I'd be able to submit an application to MMA. But until I was 17, even the kids regularly brought me down. I wasn't that good at shooting either. 9 out of my 10 shots always missed the target, and the one that hit was still far away from its center. Besides, my eyesight faded furthermore with age, so, as you see, I had no chances to pursue a sniper career. The only thing I was really good at was general athletics, running, squats, push-ups. I could also quickly climb walls. I was tall and lanky enough for it. I still don't understand whom I inherited my appearance from. My mom is beautiful beyond belief and has a great figure. Even now, she's still turning men's heads with a single glance. Dad is a burly, athletic, 6-foot-tall man. Nowadays he drinks a lot, but he's still able to fold a coin with 2 fingers or a steel pipe with only one hand. And I'm just an awkward teenager. I've practiced sports for years, but despite that, I was never able to gain some muscle or even become a bit fatter. I even tried different diets to somehow gain more body mass, but nothing really happened. You know, if I were a girl, that sort of body would be perfect, the ideal model figure and a rapid metabolism to boot. But I'm a guy, and our standards of handsomeness are completely different. Well, I was really trying so hard to become a real sportsman. I ate according to the schedule and performed a whole complex of exercises each day, so that I might look much more different by the time of my graduation. It kind of worked out, actually. At least now, I no more resembled a living skeleton. And then the exam day came. More precisely, my classmates had their exams, and I had to pass the medical and meet a couple of athletic standards in order to become a soldier. I was so nervous during the months prior to the exam day that when the day itself came, things grew a bit dull. For some reason, I was alone on the obstacle course. No, there were some people nearby taking notes and all, so I thought that the examiners just needed to figure out physical capacities of each soldier individually. Later, it turned out that that was not the case, however. As a result, when all the tests and screenings were over, I was offered a contract in the Air Force. I was going to become a war pilot. Actually, this was considered a rather prestigious job, but they made it look as if I was just not suitable for any other role. I even felt a bit hurt at first. Well, that wasn't really important for me. After all, my greatest dream did come true. I got into the army. I was going to become a real soldier after all these years. So on the first day, I actually felt ecstatic. I was still very happy while I filled out all the necessary documents and signed all the papers and such. But then, everything changed. Just imagine the situation. I went right into my barrack, threw my backpack on the bed, raised my head, and saw a bunch of girls. Every other bunk was occupied by a female soldier, and all of them were looking at me with curiosity. Each of them looked like a beautiful Valkyrie. They were from 17 to 25 years old, and I appeared to be the only guy around. For someone else, it'd be a heaven on earth, but for me it certainly looked like another ordeal. It turned out that the last military conscription kinda collapsed. In general, girls in our country have been much more willing to join the army as of late, and during the recent year, I was the only new guy to be assigned to the Air Force. Our platoon had only 2 males, me and the sergeant, but he was the authority, and well, it really wasn't looking good. At first, the sergeant kinda supervised me. He even relocated me to a bunk in the closet because girls refused to live in the same barrack with a guy. The opening week wasn't really that bad, and then the practice time came. If you thought that pilots had only flying practice, then you were horribly mistaken. The general training and standards are approximately the same for any troopers, and you have to meet the standards regardless of your area of expertise. Yes, we pilots have our flight training. Those in the Navy work with ships, and the infantry learns much more of shooting and fighting, but the basics remain the same for all of us. Still, forced marches are included in the basics, and my very first forced march in the Army was a complete disgrace to me. Before that, I thought that I could manage that with ease, and that all the girls would lose to me. In reality, those Valkyries had much more stamina and strength than me. I was physically unable to continue the march on the 3rd lap, and 2 young ladies literally dragged me by the arms, while all the other girls outran us. In the end, I was laying on the ground, howling from pain and shame, and all the girls all looked as if they had just left a beauty salon. The exact same thing happened to me later during all the challenges. Not only I was unable to beat them in a race, my results dragged all the platoon down as I came out last in every challenge. It was a complete failure. The girls were openly mocking me. At some point, even the sergeant couldn't stand it and berated me. My results were horrible, and the situation looked utterly hopeless. Each day I was crying at night for the first time in my life. I've never allowed myself to cry, not even in the earliest childhood, but now I simply could not restrain myself. It seemed to me that I was not just loser, but the rightful king of all losers, useless to anyone and despised by all. It felt horrible. I wouldn't want even my worst enemy to experience this. But in half a year, the situation began to change. Firstly, I appeared to be a really talented pilot, and secondly, my results during forced marches and the like suddenly were all rendered unimportant. You see, I was still the only guy in the whole platoon. The sergeant was old, nasty, and married, and the girls were too young to deprive themselves of all instincts with hard training. And at some point, these very instincts pointed them to the only person who could help. Firstly, the toughest girl of the squad suddenly approached me and promised to kick me from the start of the obstacle course to its finish and back again. To be honest, I got very scared. You see, she was just too tough for me, and I didn't realize that it was her way of flirting. But then all the girls, even those who had insulted me earlier, began to approach me in secret and make dirty proposals. I understood everything. Well, I certainly didn't act like a gentleman or even like a soldier, because I was unable to stop myself. It was pretty funny to watch how the girls who had despised me just a couple of months ago were now actively courting me, ready to fight for my attention. Of course, I understood that it was wrong, but I really wanted to avenge the humiliation. In order to win my favor, the girls began attacking each other. Some even resorted to theft and sabotage. They've been trying everything to frame their rivals and knock them out of the game for some time. The sergeant found himself in the eye of the storm. He was still trying to maintain order, but he was alone and there were so many girls. As soon as I showed even the slightest hints of favor towards one girl, she immediately became the target of attacks by the others. Once or twice, the girls even ambushed one of my favorites en masse. Good thing that later I got tired of taking revenge. Now I just wanted some simple human joys. I wasn't even talking about intimacy and such. I just wanted hugs, small talk, holding hands, and so on. For these purposes, I chose two of the cutest and most modest girls. Yeah, two at once. I invited each of them to date in secret so that the rest would not know about it and the girls would have no problems. Of course, I had a separate talk with each so that they would not know about each other. You can't even imagine how difficult it was to arrange secret dates in the army when there are naturally few places to hide. Good thing we sometimes had joint night shifts. There in the darkness behind the tents and outposts, there was enough space for two of us. Soon, I stopped being the most miserable person in the world and became the happiest one instead. Unfortunately, I kind of forgot about my original goal, to serve the homeland. Some may want to judge me for what I did, but I liked it and really hoped that it would continue like this. Still, all good things come to an end sooner or later. Fortunately for me, my training ended before all my dirty secrets went out. I was transferred to another place so that I could stay closer to the plains, and the girls were left behind. In a few weeks, those Valkyries somehow managed to crack my secrets and found out about everything. At the time, I was forced to block the phone because they all started calling me with threats. Well, guess I deserved it. So, here's my experience. Strange, traumatic, but also a little bit happy. Do not forget to leave a like, and remember that karma does exist, and it's up to you alone how you act in any situation.